All right, welcome. Hoping that our signal is going to be working for us today. Got a little bit of craziness, it seems like, going on. That will not stop us from doing what we call to do today. To that much, thank you for being on. All right, see if this should be cooking a little bit. All right, hopefully everybody can see and hear me all right. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your Shabbat sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect today's message. Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, Shapachi. Tisadai, Yochal Shalam. Atmi, Kovak, Kovai, Chelik, Christ, Shapachi. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Peace. Welcome. Hopefully all is well. Shabbat Shalom, whether you're following the Julian calendar or the Gregorian calendar. Either way, we're supposed to be on the same days as far as Shabbat. So Shabbat Shalom to you all. We appreciate you. Thank you for being on. We once again, as always, give all honor and praise to the Most High. We give all praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Amma, who lives a life that is able to be honored. As always, you can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, her website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, biologist by degree. Thank you, family, for being on with us on this rising. We are getting ready for Shabbat service right after this, so we don't have as long as we normally would. Kind of had a little bit of stuff extra, we might do a little extra from yesterday. We did have some questions, and we ended up kind of going deeper into Hebrew characters, the names of the Most High Yah, etc. So since that came up, we kind of dove into that a little bit. Didn't have a chance to really get to some of the questions, prayed about it a little bit more. So we're just going to kind of see what happens today. We might end up talking about Shabbat, because Shabbat in and of itself, although not a holy day, all holy days are supposed to be treated like Shabbat. So we might touch on Shabbat and touch on some of that. But we'll try to answer at least one or two. I'm having an issue. My brain is kind of foggy with one of the questions right now that was from yesterday. So if somebody comes on from yesterday, reminds me what it was that was said, feel free. But we're just going to kind of see how this goes. We go with Q&A, do what Yah's called us to do, and prayerfully we'll be able to figure out what we need to. Once again, though, real quick, mic check. Can everybody hear me? Testing 1 2. Microphone checker 1 2 checker. Can everybody hear and see me all right, wherever you might be? Said truth fears no inquiry. That's right. That's why we do Q&A. We do Q&A for 2 days straight for about 6 to 7 hours total every other week. Besides doing what we do. So yeah, I really don't mind questions, comments, and concerns. You said my moderators ban people. Well, if you were banned, you wouldn't be here today. So if you're talking about they mute you or say stuff, and if there's things that you were doing as far as like being disrespectful or something that, yes, in somebody else's culture or somebody else's thought process could be deemed as disrespect, then yeah, you might be asked to leave, or in this case, since this is not your platform and somebody else has control of it, that they might be able to have you go. But if this is going to be what the whole thing is, it seems like now you're just prodding and looking for a way to get kicked off, and if that's what you're doing to try and prove your point or whatever, then I might oblige. But maybe if you're actually willing to have actual genuine conversation and speak, and like hear somebody else's culture, their thought process, that's personal, because it's not Q&A to prove that you're better than me or blah blah. It could be, as far as who's right or wrong, but it's actually Q&A if you'd like to hear something from this perspective, and then we could have an actual debate which has rules, regulations, etc. if you'd like, back and forth with each other. It doesn't seem like that's what you're on now, but if you're willing to actually be patient enough and wait, there are other questions that at least there's one question that's ready to come before yours. And if you could wait, I can come to you, no problem. But you probably should start off with a green hello rather than trying to take some kind of weird peeing contest to see who's better than the other. But that's up to you. We'll see where this goes, right? I'm not tripping either way, right? I appreciate you coming on, right? So let's see. So anyways, to everybody who's on, thank you for being on with us. How you doing, Sister Deborah? How you doing, Brother Keith? Sister Danielle, Japan, Sister Carla, Sister Dawn, Sister Tamika, Elder Tamara, Big Brother Thomas, How you doing? Remember me, Darius, Rodney, Denise. Um, I don't know if it's Anima. User 591-859-78019. God's Watchman, B. Medlin, Orion, Sumo, Heaven on Earth. Okay. I don't know how to write that, I don't know what that calligraphy says, so please forgive me, but welcome to you, Terry. And if there's anybody else who's coming in, we appreciate your presence. Whether you agree with us, disagree with us, whatever the case might be, we actually are thankful to have you on, and we hope that you're doing well. Bob Marlin, yeah, let me just say this to the trolls. You got to up your game. I say this all the time. Y'all are on low, I don't know if you would call it low frequency or whatever, but you're playing the Dozens or your Jones or whatever are kind of trash. Just because I have locks and I'm black, I'm Bob Marley. Okay. But, and I don't mind being called Bob Marley. Bob Marley's great, but that's easy. That's easy work. That's not work. You know how many persons come on and say Bob Marley? The same amount of persons who come on and say the N-word. So I get that several times a day. You got to be better than that. All right? Just say, if you want me to actually, if your goal is to make me feel bad, you got to be better. So lift it up. But thank you for being on. If you actually want to learn something, you can learn past the trolling. But if you are only here to troll, feel free to go ahead and roll, because it's not going to do anything to me. How you doing, Art? You said you saw a man flirting with his mom yesterday, and she was married and stuck around. You got sick or got angry. Yeah. Cats be doing all types of stuff to try and figure out how to make this stuff work out and think that they so smarter than everybody else that they can do that stuff on the low. Come on. All right. How you doing, Sister Shima? Praise y'all for you. How you doing, Pearl? All right, we're going to go ahead and get into this Q&A. I do have one question before U.S. Japan, at least. The second question is fogging my brain done right now that somebody asked me from yesterday that I was supposed to answer today. So if you don't mind waiting, I'll answer question number one. I'll come over to you for question number two. I don't even know what it is. Let me double check it. It's probably, we'll see if we have time for all this stuff. Oh, that's the question? Was the question, why do your minds ban people? Do challenge ideas and stuff? Okay, so that's the question. That's not really the question, but I'll even answer it to a certain degree. Right, but once again, you're not banned, you're here. It's like when people say, why did you block me? You're not blocked if you can come back. If you're muted, right, muted means that you can't say anything, right? And the TikTok, I have to be careful, I can't say the platform names. Certain platforms, you get banned, or, you get blocked. If you're blocked, or I could report somebody for harassment and stuff like that, I do any of that stuff, right? And if my moderators do so because we didn't do it. The moderators that help us at SOC, they basically run the show for me, because there was a time we actually are very kind of suppressed now, numbers-wise and signal-wise, of what we used to get, which I'm cool with, but there used to be a time where we were having literally on all platforms, we easily could have 40,000 persons on, not at the same time, but during the whole 2-3 hours. And so during that time, a lot of persons say a lot of crazy stuff, and so we've learned to actually see kind of where stuff is going, or see when we're asking persons certain things, what they'll do. And so if you follow certain patterns, we probably, they know what to do. Right? How you doing, Sister Melissa? And if you're in Maryland, any of you who are in Maryland, DC, Virginia, don't forget, right here, 2:30 p.m. New York time, physically, we'll be doing our 4 hours of power. It'll also be on virtually. I will have it well, I'll just go ahead and say the platform name. They might take our stuff down on one platform, but it is what it is. We'll be on Zoom as well as on certain social media later on for it. So if you'd like to join us, then feel free to join us. It'll be for 4 hours of power. I'll be focusing on certain things that are going to be coming out in like a concordance that we've been putting together for a little bit. So feel free to join us, but that'll be at 2:30 p.m. New York time, especially if you're in the DMV, you're close enough to it to where you feel like you'd like to come by. It'll be right here in this spot in a place called Drew Hill Park in Baltimore, Baltimore, Maryland. Right? Okay, Japan, once again, so you're making this thing. It is what it is. I'll get back to you in a second if you want. It is what it is, right? So let's go ahead and get to this. Thank y'all for the love. Thank you for likes, subscriptions, and the notification tab, all that great stuff. Let's go ahead and get into it. It's Saturday. We don't have as much time as we normally do, and we got to get ready for this word by Elder Anais Slater on the podcast. Alrighty. So if you have your Bible or your device or your right hand, if you just want to put it in the air and repeat after me. This is my Bible. This is my sword. And this will I trust. For Yahshua is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible. And this is Yah's word. Hashem Yehovah. Amen. Hashem, his name is authority. Let it be done unto us. You may be seated or go back to what you were doing. In the presence of the Most High Yah. So Shabbat, Shalom, peace. We're just going to kind of see where this goes. I guess this is Q&A-ish. And depending on where we go, we'll see where Holy Spirit takes us. But once again, you guys today are kind of sort of in the so-called driver's seat. How you doing, Sister Taylor? How you doing, Sister Jennifer? Thank y'all for the love once again. Alrighty. So, today, let's start with a question that was a holdover from yesterday. Very serious question, and one that I don't want to just skip over because it's something that, in all honesty, I dealt with myself. And so hopefully the person that asked it will be able to either see this live or watch this later on. But they were asking specifically about how does one deal with lust, specifically, sexual deviancy that can come in the place of imagery, right, through social media, through the internet, through magazines, back in the day, VHSs, DVDs. Basically, how does one deal with what we call today pornography, right, or lust in general? So I've made no bones about it. I haven't tried to hide this before. I'm somebody who's actually dealt with that for a long time. I'm one of those young boys that had, father, great father, all this stuff at the same time, had no issue with it, and kept a whole bunch of stuff for years and years and years. And I happened to come across the stash one day, cleaning up in an area, or no, I could have been just in the area I wasn't supposed to in the house, but going in the closet, going through some stuff. Next thing you know, I see something on there, 3 X's, piques my interest. I'm like 7 or 8 years old. No, about 8 years. No, that's a lie. I'm about 9 years old. Right, so young. About 9 years old. And I put the VHS in, and I see some stuff. And back then, he had some of the stuff even that go back to, the 70s and the 80s when people actually made like mini movies. Now you just go and they just do all the stuff, but they had like little movies and people were supposed to act, and it just so happened that you have these scenes in it, and then the scenes they were supposed to, do their stuff, right? So I'm watching this thing, and then all of a sudden the scene pops up, and it's kind of a crazy. I won't explain what the scene is, but still to this day, very traumatic experience in my mind. But still to this day, I see it, and I start, at 9 years old, my stuff isn't necessarily working, but I start feeling some kind of way, and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, it kind of clicked in. Next thing you know, I go into puberty and stuff like that, and from about 9 until my mid to late 20s, it was an extreme problem to the point to where it got to where I couldn't wait for everybody to be gone from the house and stuff, or even when I'll be on there on the computer, especially once it got to the computer. So on the computer all day, watching whatever I could, buying whatever I could, watching whatever, except for certain things, that weren't what I was into, whatever. But long story short, I'm watching just about everything I can get my hands on, feeding the flesh. So I had to come out of that, and I realized, and I was dealing with that when I was called to preach. I was dealing with that when I was playing music. I was dealing with that when I was in the military. I was dealing with that on the job. I was dealing with that as a young man. I was still dealing with that while being married, right? So just to be honest, I just want to put that out there because I know how much that can take some person's life, especially because, to be honest, I have what they call an addictive personality. So for me, I have to be careful. If I do something 2 to 3 days and it seems to work, right, I'm going to press real hard to get to that 2-week period. Because once I get to about 2 weeks, it's not going anywhere for a really long time. So, so I've been very careful and taking a lot of time, and it took me a little bit to find out some things about what was going on about myself, and really that the pornography is not so much the issue. It is actually it's really more so it's a medicine. It's something you're using to escape, right? And how you doing? Is it Loves You Lots? Tia's Love to TQ? Loves You Lot, is it? And how you doing? Is it Yasinma? Is that Yasinma? I don't know. And thank y'all for the love, whoever that is, or anime, whoever it is. So we have a lot of different things, right? And how you doing, Danielle? We have a lot of so there's a lot of different things that come with that. So I want to go to something because really, like we talk about, even with drugs and all types of stuff. Um, you know, all these things that become abusive usually are not your problem, or they're not actually the sickness, the issue. They're usually what you're using to mask the symptoms. They're not even necessarily the symptom, right? They're usually something that you use to mask the symptom, or I guess, well, I don't know. We'll see how Holy Spirit wants to deal with that, because it could be the symptom of what you use to mask it, right? But long story short, we are, when it comes to this word pornography, I want to go to a Greek term that we've studied here quite a bit. So you guys at SOC and SOC adjacent, you have heard me talk about this before. How you doing, Lady K? Welcome back. You guys have heard me talk about this before. That being said, the word pornography, right? It comes from a word in the Greek called porneia. And in the Bible, this word porneia is used to speak specifically, right? When we talk about porneia or pornography, this word is used specifically to talk about the word fornication. The word fornication does not necessarily mean, though, open up a book and look at some images, or go online and look at some images, or go to a brothel of some sort and see whatever. No, the word porneia or pornography, actually in its origin, fornication even, means to have a false image of marriage, right? For one to have a false image of marriage. Once again, Japan, you can just wait for me to go ahead and do all this stuff. When you keep saying this stuff, people are responding to you. You could easily just wait, because you're coming up next, right? You see what I'm saying? Like, and then you get weirded out when person say, things, back towards you or something like that. And you probably would just wait, and then I'll explain to you, even though it's not really a question, but I'll explain it because, hey, we're on Q&A. Why not go there, right? So, anyways, when it comes to pornography, it is a false image of marriage. That's what porneia or even fornication means. So when you read in your Bible, when it says fornication and adultery, a lot of you think adultery is the only reason for divorce. But no, fornication is also one, because fornication is a false image of marriage. Not, once again, meaning that it's we're talking about homiletically. It doesn't have to mean that I have to see it, but anything that paints a false picture or a false narrative of what marriage is. If we keep going further and further down that road and keep getting worse and worse in marriage because of false imagery or false mindset or false doctrine, then yes, those can be things that lead to two grounds for divorce. Right? Those can be things that lead to grounds for divorce. Right? So when it comes to a false image or false imagery of marriage, right? When it comes to false imagery of marriage, anything that is a false imagery of marriage is considered to be pornography. Now, that extends itself obviously easy to looking at things, but also too, when we have trained and protected ourselves, protected our children, protected our devices, learned to make sure that we are separate from the world in a lot of different ways. We have a lot of false images of marriage that pop in, right? And a lot of persons don't know this, but in our culture, once again, I'm coming from our perspective, our prism. So in our culture, right, sex is marriage, marriage is sex. Out, right? So you have to be qualified for this thing. We're talking about obviously just the physical, right? The physical, there's obviously doctrine, and it's an institution, so you must deal with, there are things that come with the institution, and without the institution must be protected, the persons within the institution must be protected, etc. But if we break this down to a real simple place, sex is marriage, marriage is sex. Right, in our culture, when two persons come together and there's betrothal, right, when somebody begins affiance, or you're asked for somebody to marry you, that is when you do your paperwork, and the families that come together, everybody agrees on everything, terms, and then the husband begins to build a place for his wife, the wife begins to prepare herself for her husband, but the two do not live with each other still, right? Whether that's arranged, whether that's because the couple met each other, whether that's because the man pursued, whatever the case might be, but that's how that works, right? From the jump. Now, secondly, after that, then we get to a place where the husband is sent back by his father, right? Once he prepared a place for his wife, His wife, who's preparing herself for her husband, gets word she should have oil in her lamp, right? And she makes sure, right, the 10 virgins parable, she should have the oil in her lamp. And then when he comes, right, then he comes, she turns on the light, right, and they go together. All right. And then there is a ceremony. During the ceremony, the two will, at some point, go and do their thing. And when they go do their thing, then they are known as husband and wife. Right? That's the cultural reference point for a lot of different things, a lot of scriptures that you may or may not know about. Right? And how you doing, Brother Dwayne? So in this, right, we have all these different things that are going on with marriage, right? But that's because marriage for us is taught from, really, we could say technically in the womb or even before, so if you want to get into the spirit of things. However, let's just deal with, then from when the time we're born, we in our culture train husbands and wives from that time. We don't wait. We don't try to say, okay, now that you're 20-something, now that you got your job together, now that your career's going, let's start teaching about marriage. We don't say date as much as possible. No. In our culture, marriage is taught from childhood, from birth. And that's one of the issues that's missing, right? So because of that lack of stuff, there's a lot of lust that happens, right? And we're going to talk right now about lust versus love. And is it Black Beauty? Thanks for being on. I don't know how to pronounce it. PYER_P. Thanks for being on with us, and thank y'all for the love. Hello, God, Brew Culture, everybody coming in on all the platforms. We appreciate you. So Shabbat and Shabbat Shalom to all. So a lot of us, we have an issue with lust versus love, right? A lot of persons, your first love is really your first lust. You know, a lot of boys, your first crush, right? If it was that school teacher or whatever, right? It was really your first lust. Shabbat Shalom, Jason, how you doing? See, so a lot of us confuse lust with love, and when we lust after something, we actually begin to covet it, right? When we lust, we begin to covet. Paul had to teach us that concerning law. He said if there was no law to tell us that we should not covet, he said then he wouldn't realize that, he shouldn't lust. So a lot of persons who want stuff that doesn't belong to us, a husband's supposed to only have one wife, if everything works out perfectly, obviously. But a husband should only have one wife his entire life, and his wife should only have a husband, or one husband, her entire life. Right? You concerned? I don't know what blue beam is. I'm sorry. I have no clue what that is. I really do. I apologize. I have no clue what blue beam is. Somebody has to enlighten me on what that is, and I have to maybe, I don't know if I need to research it or whatever. Right? But as far as the lust, so pornography is a false image of marriage. Usually what happens is that you're lusting for something. Now watch this. You want something, right, that you need. Right, but we have all our needs met, we shall not want. So if Yah hasn't given you a wife, right, then that's not a need, or that, then you don't have the need for marriage or for sex or for these different things. Right? You don't have the need for certain things. Right now I'm in the States. And is that a way of saying hello? Hello, is it Mark? Marquis? I don't know how to pronounce it. Marquis? Mark? Thanks for being on. So a lot of persons miss a lot of things that they don't recognize what's going on. So when you're talking about lust, when you're talking about pornea, or a false image of marriage, or what persons today call pornography, it starts with coveting, with wanting something that does not belong to you. Right? And we start there. Now there are men and women who have been interviewed from the porn industry, and they will tell you straight up that they actually enjoy the whole thing of being lusted after. It's a spirit. So, and I was watching one interview one time where a woman said that she actually likes persons lusting after her. She liked the fact that persons were following after her like that, and she knew that she could control others. That's what she said. And how you doing, AP Raw? Thanks for being part of the community. So that's what she said. She said she likes it to the extent. She likes it because she actually is able to control other persons, right? So that was one of the things that she brought up, is that she really appreciates what's going on, when persons are lusting after her, which shows that persons know that you are looking for something, but they give you, persons say, here's one thing about pornography, persons will say that they have you following, and thanks for being part of the community, Mark, Marky. They persons will say that they give you a fantasy, and sometimes that's true, but a lot of times what happens is you're actually getting what you're lacking. This is why one of the most devious things, those on Facebook, especially men on Facebook, you probably have seen this more than others have, right? And they know what's on devices. So little boys get a lot of this on their little games. They don't get it to the same level that the grown men do, even though it seems like they're starting to try to get them when they're young and they're getting the girls and stuff too. But you'll see that AI, this whole AI thing, AI girls, right? There's apps, a lot of apps talk about AI girls and stuff, and it's straight up, porn, and they show it on social media. Like it's shown. It's not blocked. It's anything like if you on Facebook, you gotta be careful. If you're on Facebook certain times of night and you're just watching whatever, you just scrolling as you do. If you're a guy, it's automatic that the thought process is that we're gonna give you an AI girl. Why? And what do these commercials say? Right? Before you even get a chance to scroll, it immediately comes up, pops up, and it says stuff like, it goes, "Oh yeah, this is oh I'm an AI girl, and I'll give you whatever you like. I'll never not talk to you. I'll never not listen. I'll always know what you want. I'll always do what you want me to do." The mindset is they're trying to give you what a wife should give you. Now, the wife shouldn't always have to agree with you per se, but you get what I'm saying, right? The thing that a wife provides is what is being put on the screen, or the thing that a husband provides is what is being put on the screen. Whether you're only thinking physical lust, right, or you're thinking spiritually, that's what's put on the screen before you. Right? So they're doing these things purposefully, right? They're doing these things purposefully. They are doing these things strategically to try and get you and I off track. Okay. Is it buffering still? I went to another signal, then as soon as I went to the other signal, it was interesting, then it went back to 4 bars. So somebody's messing with the signal, seems like, and I don't know. But can you guys hear me and see me? Am I buffering that bad? How you doing, Sister Judith? It's better than what it was? Okay, so it's still not. Yeah, I don't know what that is then. What you say, deception of sin? Uh, Deception of sin. You think you are controlling them, and the carnal spirit is controlling you, but we are no longer enslaved. That's right. That's right. You see what I'm saying? So, how you doing, Bruder Richard? So, a lot of persons have issues with that, and in pornography, false image of marriage, porneia, false image of marriage, which is also fornication, false image of marriage. It becomes something that can be catastrophic and can really mess you up. It begins to deal with your works. It attacks, right? It's attacking who you are, and you begin to covet. You begin to want something rather than get what you need and become who you are. And you start to live in the fantasy world of something that, hey, I want, it starts off with, so it goes to fantasy in a sense because it starts off with a real desire, which is, I want to be one with somebody. Right? Right, thank you, Sister Sheena. Right? So that's a desire. I want to be one with somebody. That's what the desire is I would like to be one with somebody. And then it can go from there, right? And this is a desire that we've been given from the womb. Right? This was a desire this was God's desire in perfection. Had Adam and Eve not missed the mark, not or not sinned, we would have still wanted to procreate. Right? So these are things that we have, and these are things that are there for us, and things that we would like to do. How you doing, Flawless? But here comes the problem. The problem comes in when now I'm not waiting on what Yah says, or I'm not waiting on what the Word gives me, or I'm not waiting on. I don't know what a husband is. I haven't been trained to be a husband. I haven't been trained to be a wife. I haven't been trained to be a parent, right? Because marriage, yes, sex is marriage, marriage is sex, but it is an institution. When two become one, a whole bunch of things have to be in order, right? So one of the dangers with pornography, number one, is that it's putting you in a place to where you're getting, as we say all the time, even with dating, it's kind of dating mentality. I want to get certain things out of marriage without being married. That's right. It's God's will that man will not be alone, right? So it's a huge desire for us, right? Woman comes from man. The only thing that come out of the so-called womb, if you want to call it that, the inside of man, the loins of man, as far as coming from a piece of us outside of obviously sperm, is woman, or is ayazah, is help me. And so when we see help me, this is why a lot of men, quiet is kept, right? A lot of men desire almost just about, if they're not, especially when the lust is out of control, they'll go with any kind of woman they can get their hands on. This is why, sisters, you have to also realize that you need to make sure that you know somebody who's not just a man, but is a husband, and really a husband that Yah has ordained to be a husband, right? Because if Yah didn't ordain that husbandry, so to speak, right? Which husbandry literally is, husband can look at what binds the house together, or husband can even be one who literally is supposed to till the ground, take care of the property, make sure things are growing, just like Adam was supposed to do what? He was supposed to make sure that he dressed the garden and kept it, and anything inside the garden is his responsibility. How you doing, babe? My wife is on. The Honorable Almas. Always check her out on TikTok, YouTube, website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish, not A&D, the letter N. Bloom and Flourish. She is a healer, herbalist, chemist, biologist, by degree. Love you, babe. Thanks for being on. All right. So in all these different things that are going on, there's a lot of stuff that comes with it, and so you got to be careful, because yes, there are a lot of men that would go here, here, here. So if a man is not in his work, that's why a man, right, or a husband is supposed to have a work before he has a wife, right? If he doesn't have a work, within his work, he's supposed to find the need for wife, and within his work, then he starts to look for wife, right? So this is why even in when people do arranged marriages, you'll see that they will actually make sure that they start talking about even if they haven't been born yet, even the child hasn't been born yet, they start talking about what is this person going to become, because the child, the boy especially, right, who becomes the man, becomes the husband, he must be given a work, and his work will indicate to him what the need for his wife is for him in his walk, and how he needs to protect her within that work. It's a different kind of conversation. So a lot of us are trying to have, when you talk about the pornography, or the false image of marriage, the pornography, a lot of persons are putting the cart before the horse, where they want pieces of the stuff, but they don't want to actually have what Yah says, right? And so a man who is not in his work is undisciplined, and the undisciplined man is not going to worry about being faithful to the discipline or to his work, let alone to his wife. See, this is why I'm not talking about your job, even though your job can be your work, your toil sometimes, or it's not necessarily a toil. But hear what I'm saying? Your work, right? When one is disciplined in their work, everything in their life is focused in their work. So when the wife is put first, she's put first within the work, which means that the first thing that happens, everything that the work is about is going to be about, okay, this must take care of my wife. If it doesn't take care of my wife, that's not my work. Yeah, seek Yah first in all things wholeheartedly, the appetite for lustful desires. That's right. Seek ye first the kingdom and all his righteousness, and what? And all these things, anything you're looking for, shall be added unto thee. So when you have a man disciplined in his work, so this is one of the dangerous things about pornography as well, because pornography causes you to be undisciplined in your work. Once again, I'll talk from personal experience. You'll sit up there for hours and hours and hours and hours, not getting your work done. It can get to that point. Or even maybe you should get your work done. Or guess what? Part of your work, and here's the wild part, is that you have a wife. Right? Sisters, you have a husband. I'm talking about my perspective though. You have a wife. So you could just have relations with your wife. So, but instead of taking care of your wife, your most important of all works, you'll end up trying to pretend that you can take care of all these women, which now means that you are not just committing adultery or committing fornication, because fornication is a false image of marriage. So you're committing both, right? You're not mature, because that's what adultery is. Adultery, or adultus means to be immature. So you're not mature enough to handle one woman, right? Which is why a whole bunch of men want a bunch of women. So that's pornography, even if they're not looking at the screen. If you have all these women you have relations with, or you every woman that passes, you gotta look under her skirt and try to do some weird stuff that y'all be doing out here sometimes, then, right, that's also fornication, and that's also adultery. You're immature, right? But now what happens is that you don't even realize that you're trying to have a brothel, or what do they call it? A harem, I think, right? Harem. You're trying to have a harem. You're trying to do all this weird stuff, and you're trying to say, but I'm faithful to one wife. And so now you can't even treat your wife correctly. Matter of fact, the woman who's been given to you, the wife who's been given to you, that you can become one with anytime you like. Now, you can't even be obedient to that part of the covenant. See, so pornography is dangerous for a lot of reasons, but once again, it masks a lot of the symptoms. So there's a lot of symptoms that come, and especially the more, you'd be surprised, the more, when men get depressed, a lot of men and women, for real, a lot of persons, when they get depressed, they go into pornography, right? Because it's a medicine. It's a medicine. It gets your mind off things. It gets your body pumping. And here's the wild part: it's just like a drug. If you're looking at that on the screen, if you're looking at that in books all the time, if you get to a point where you're always looking for it, it becomes a drug. It becomes something that, like, you're looking for that first high, right? Because what happens in pornography, this is why I tell persons, be careful. First, I don't know how much we can go into this, but there are persons who might, I don't know, do something with the word bait at the end of it, right? And when they do that, a lot of times you have to think about someone, right? You have to think about someone, right? You have to think about someone doing something to you. So many persons, when they look at the screen, they look at all this stuff, you're imagining yourself doing it, or you're imagining, what if I was doing that too, right? And so when you're doing that, you're now actually putting yourself in a place where you're having a relationship. This is when the spiritual side pops up. It's media, it's media, right? It's media. This is media. So if it's media means that it is a go-between, right? It's a medium, it's a witch. This is witchcraft, it's sorcery, right? Where somebody is taking an image, they are taking themselves, they're almost, in a sense, astral projecting, for people who like that term. In a sense, somebody's astral projecting themselves, and you're able to do stuff with the astral projection. So you're receiving this person in and trying to become one with somebody. It's dangerous. If you want to know more, I'll kind of leave it there for now, and I'll just say one more thing after that. But if you want more on that, I would say read Revelation chapter 2 and look at the way that the world looks at the horror who's on top of the beast. And the things that they would do, and ultimately the beast becomes stained with their blood, right? The world becomes stained with their blood, because in chasing for this thing that you'll never be able to get to again, that first high that you'll never be able to get to again, but spending all this time and doing all that, ultimately you'll lose your life. You'll lose your eternal life. You'll lose your marriage. You'll lose the things that are important to you. Or some of you won't ever get to the point where you really truly be able to be married. And nowadays, when they got this AI girl stuff out there, you better be careful. I'm just saying. How you doing, Emperor Linus? And thank y'all for the love. So, but how does one come out of it? Fasting. Not just fasting from food, even though it might help. Fasting means to leave it alone. Obviously, though, that's easier said than done for some. That's cold turkey. So, you'll get withdrawals, by the way, when you go cold turkey. It's an addiction. You don't shake it. When you get mad, you used to go do it. When you were sad, you used to go do it. When you just had an open time, you go do it. It's like when a person stopped smoking cigarettes. And you used to have cigarettes all day. Now you don't have a cigarette during that time. You got to figure out what to do outside of the cigarette, right? Outside of that addiction. So so there's certain things too. Like I said, try to find out more, figure out more about marriage. Try and figure out what that's thing that you're missing. Like I said, it masks a lot of symptoms. You might be depressed. You sit down with somebody and talk about it. Find experts. There are experts in the field. There's psychologists, psychiatrists, persons that you can speak with. Some persons, I've had conversations with some brothers who told me that they have issues with pornography, and I literally have said, hey, your wife and you are one, right? And you love her and this and that. You should be able to talk to her. Tell her that you're having a problem about it. Now that we've talked about it, tell her you have a problem about it, and sit down with her, and especially if she already knows you have a problem, because sometimes the wives already know, right? So if she knows you already had a problem, you guys set up something to where there's deliverance that can happen. In other words, when you start to go to this place that you feel like you're feeling this kind of way, or there's this urge or whatever, that urge is supposed to be for your wife. So go to your wife, number one, but and tell her what's going on, tell her that you're having this urge. And it doesn't mean y'all have to have sex right away. That's not what I'm saying. Even though if y'all decide to do that, that's for you. But I'm saying go to her and have some things in place, right? Go to your wife and tell her, like, I'm having this issue. I'm feeling a certain way. You know, a lot of times we as men don't feel like we could or we should go to our wives, and sometimes it might be warranted, but a lot of times it's not. Go to your wife. She's right there. Or sisters, go to your husband and have honest conversation, honest dialogue, and that means also too, the person who's being brought to, you got to be able to have honest dialogue and honest conversation about it, and open up about it, and allow the person to, you know, to be able to say, like, yeah, this is kind of what I'm doing, this is kind of what I am, you know, I don't know what's going on, and allow the person in. You'd be surprised that sometimes you guys can work that out yourselves. But I'll leave that there, because if so, this will turn into just the Portania episode, and that's not necessarily what this is about today. Praise y'all. So I just wanted to get to that one, because I know that question was there from yesterday. All right. If I don't even know if Japan is on anymore, probably not. Probably got upset because everybody's been telling him to chill and be patient. Or hopefully Japan is. He or she. Forgive me. But give me. I feel like there's something I'm supposed to be getting. Oh yeah. Give me a second. I will be right back. Right. Give me like hopefully 20 seconds. I'm just gonna grab something out the vehicle, and I shall return. Okay. So, um, so the next question, if the person's still on, if the person's not on, if they come back on again doing the same thing, I'm just gonna have to tell them to refer back to this video. What's today, September 13th? I'm gonna have to tell them, go back to September 13th, 2025. What'd you say, Crash? Hello? You said facts, bro, you cannot speak to your spouse honestly and openly, then you do have some reevaluating to do, for sure. For sure. Right? So as far as the next question that came up in today's content, so we're just seeing where the flow goes and where this takes us. You said you always appreciate Q&A, hit pinpoints, allow the challenges to bring us closer with truth and growing wisdom. Praise y'all. No matter how you doing, Sister Shirley. So let me see. Yeah. So real quick. I'm sorry, Brother Alton. You asked something while I was talking, didn't you? Oh, you said, is that a Jezebel spirit? I don't recall exactly what I was talking about. The Jezebel spirit, witchcraft, control. So control Jezebel spirit, trying to make sure that somebody actually can be, you know. Oh, okay. I guess with somebody who thinks that they can control you, right? So Jezebel spirit, yes, has to deal with control, manipulation, somebody coming in saying that they love you in a certain way, doing certain things or whatever, and then getting power behind the throne and being able to use that against the persons that are in there, right? So yeah, so I think that's where you typed it in, or when you were about it, you said in the Book of Revelation. Okay, so you might have to, if I'm off, you might have to remind me about what I was talking about. Forgive me. And how you doing, big brother Charles? Double OG, triple OG. Hopefully you and Sister Monica doing well. So, yeah. So a question was brought up. I don't know if the person's still on or not. If they aren't, it is what it is. I'm answering it once. If they come back on some foolishness, I'm gonna tell them to refer to today, and that'll be that. Glad all is well. So somebody said earlier, you guys are on here and you're always muting me, you're always blocking me. First of all, you're not blocked. You can't be blocked if you're on, right? But you're muting me, which is what they probably meant. Or you guys are telling me that I have to get off, which sometimes the moderators might be able to have somebody have to be off for 30 seconds, a minute, couple minutes, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. And somebody said, why is it that we don't? So I'm just going to answer this outright. It was a question given. I'll answer it outright, and then we'll move on to the next thing. But the person basically just was like, hey, why is it that you guys don't answer my questions and stuff like that when we're literally in the midst of something called Q&A, that we're actually in the midst of doing an extra day today, right? But I wanted to make it known that on these Q&A sessions, they are open. How you doing, Sister Greta? We do want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity. We do want to do our best to give persons every opportunity that we can, right? We do want to give everybody an opportunity we can to ask questions. But questioning just for the sake of questioning, that's not what Q&A is. Or at least if you say that's what it is, it's not what it is here. We have this platform that we have been brought up, that we've been blessed to have received, and we take care of it and honor it and cherish it. We come from a particular cultural perspective, right? So there are things that we do here that others do not do, and we believe in protecting ourselves and them and culture and biblical reference point and really Hebraic Israelite cultural context that is supposed to be married with Hadach Hashem with the kingdom of heaven, right? So these are the things. So these are the things that we really, are about. These are the things that we really are doing. These are the things that we're trying to make sure are done correctly as far as what the Most High wants. We're going to keep trying to make sure these things are done and correct here. Now, if somebody has a question, you have a question, you can ask a question about whatever you want. Matter of fact, you can curse up a storm, even though we would hope you wouldn't, and you would get the memo not to do it after. But if you do it, it's like you're not going to be penalized for the first time, or you're coming on here and you don't know any better. That being said, if you ask a question, you must also recognize that we're going to answer it in the prison we've been given, right? I'm not going to answer a question by saying, okay, I need to agree with you. I'm going to answer a question from the position that I'm in and what I'm called to. I'm in a position right now that I don't represent myself. That being said, I try my best to be as empathetic as possible, which means if you tell me something, right, I'm going to try and look at it from your perspective and show you, but then I'm going to give you something parabolic or a parable of sorts to help you to comprehend where I'm coming from in the kingdom. If you outright are in a position to where you are just off or wrong as far as our perspective and you're not even able to grasp what's going on, then I'm going to make it a point to tell you you're wrong. That's not how we think. And if you just go, well, I know what the Bible says, many persons have read the Bible and don't comprehend it, right? Like many persons have read the Bible their whole life, and if I said, what does Balashat mean? They couldn't tell. Many persons have read the book of Malachi. We just finished that series last night. Excellent series. I would ask you guys to go back and look at it when you get a chance, right? We finished that series last night. If many persons, I would say, what's the real name of Malachi? Many persons wouldn't know what the real name of the book of Malachi is. It's not called the book of Malachi in reality. It's actually called the burden of the word of Yahweh to Israel. It's written by Malachi, so that's what you call it. But that's not what that scroll is actually called. And when you read it, then you'll see why it's a burden to give for any person to preach that or teach that, because a lot of persons don't want to do what the Bible says, right? So when we're going through these things, I just want you to know, like a lot of persons, may not get that perspective. That being said, we have moderators for a reason, because many persons try to take over, and you don't realize that even if you're not speaking out loud, right, you guys know what you're doing, but maybe you don't know what you're doing. Let me help you. If you come on and you're going upset and you're frustrated and you're like, well, you're wrong, some persons are just listening, but a lot of persons listen and read the comments simultaneously. And if you were in the chat being disruptive, then you take away from the ability for others to learn, right? They came here to learn, and I hate to be this person. I don't hate to be this person. I love to be this person. I don't like it all the time, but I love to be this person. This is what I'm called to be. So in this instance, no offense, but nobody's showing up for you to take over. If you have questions, ask the questions, and we'll give it to you as much as possible. But it's not a takeover for you to just start saying this, and everybody has to stop what they're doing. And even I have to get distracted because I'm trying to be nice enough to answer your questions if you say I don't answer, because you're making the point to say you're not this, you're not a preacher, you don't know anything, you're dumb, you're stupid, you're not historic. Even if you're not using those words, we know what that type of rhetoric sounds like, right? So if you're coming in with that type of spirit or mindset, yeah, you're going to get muted, and after a while, or depending on not just the frequency of how much you do, but maybe as far as the severity of what you're doing, you might get blocked. It is not our intention, right? It is not Yah's will that any would perish, but all would have everlasting life. Let's bring that down a few pegs, and let's say it's not Yah's intention that any of you would get blocked, but that all of you would be able to be here as much as is possible. That being said, there are consequences for actions, and if you're not going to do what you're supposed to, or you're going to mistreat this, or you're going to come in and be like, hey, I don't care what your belief, culture, et cetera, is, you're going to try to demand from us, right, that what you won't even give us back, then yeah, you might get muted. All right, so it is Q&A. today. We usually do it every other Thursday, Friday. We're doing a little extra today, but it's usually every other Thursday and Friday. And you guys can have at it for hours and hours and hours. But also too, there are other persons that have questions, comments, and concerns. And if you're doing any of that I just said, there's definitely a possibility that the moderators, usually it's the moderators before myself, and I trust them. That's why they're moderators. But somebody's going to get you. Somebody's going to turn yourself off. Somebody's going to tell you about yourself, possibly. Now, hopefully, if the moderators get out of control and they get out of pocket, that's on them too, right? There can be times it was a long time ago, but we've had times when persons were getting a little too quick to get people off, and too quick to tell everybody off, right? Right, but ultimately the moderators are there because I trust them. I see something, and even in a certain extent, some of them have a gift for moderation. Just like persons have a gift for a lot of stuff, some of them are gifted as moderators and literally can use their perspective and use what they do sometimes, not just to mute or block or whatever, sometimes, or just protect myself or protect the platform. Sometimes they're really great at using what they're doing to be able to get the person locked in. So just wanted to put that out there. I've answered the question, right, which wasn't really a question, but I answered the question now. So if that person has an issue, right, if a person has an issue with that, that's just your issue. So if that person, I believe it's Japan, if that person comes back on this platform, whether today or another day, I'm just going to refer you to September 13th, 2025, and tell you to go ahead and watch that video, right? Go maybe to the 40-minute mark or so, and you'll be able to hear it for yourself, and I'm not going to answer it anymore, okay? All right, so I answered. Whether you heard it or not, right, is up to you, or whether you not just listen to it, but hear it, right? Not just hearken to it, but hear it. If you hearken diligently, great. If you decide not to, okay. All righty. And thank y'all for the love, and thank you, babe. Baba can shut it down. How you doing, Michael? All righty. So thank you for being on all the different platforms today. We appreciate you. Hopefully the signal is better. Everybody was saying the signal might be a little iffy today. That's okay, though. Thank you for being on with us. We very much so appreciate your presence today. We honor you. Hopefully all is well. All right, so back to Jezebel is I guess you're saying is pornography or pornea or false image of marriage, is that related to the Jezebel spirit? As far it can be if you're talking about the person that's trying to take control over you, right? So in that sense, you can say that yes, but a Jezebel spirit doesn't have to necessarily be attached to sexuality, although sexuality can be used something that is used, right, to have somebody be stuck on their island boy. Well, Guan, how you doing, sir? Long time no talk to. Hopefully all has been well. Prayerfully all has been well. Also, too, Brother Jay, you know who you are, not J-A-Y, but I'm shortening his name. Brother Jay, you know who you are. Be safe on your travels. Hopefully you land safe and everything on the island, going over the ocean, going back home, going to Jamaica. So hopefully y'all are going to be safe and everything, and God works out everything well, and you guys are able to come back safely and all that great stuff. All righty. You and your wife. Let's see. So, let's see. I guess, any other questions, comments, or concerns? We still got a little bit of time left before Elder Anais comes and gets ready to give us this word today. We still got a little bit of time left before Elder Anais comes and gives us this word today. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? If not, I have a couple things that I can just throw out here. Is it just one? Or what? We're having some signal issues today. Something crazy going on. All right. Well, it's going to work itself out. Sorry, y'all. Okay. Any other questions? Thank y'all for the love. If not, okay. How can someone rest in something they didn't live? That's one of those in-depth questions. You might have to. How I might want rest or how I might want Shabbat. I guess is that a specific Shabbat thing, or is that one of those things that make you go things? You said you're a new Christian and you'd like to learn about fasting. Cool. So no offense, Jason. It might be your first time being on, and if it is, Shalom, peace, Shabbat Shalom. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Uh, the the question the question is, or I'm sorry, the question is great, but I just want to be honest with you. We're coming from the biblical perspective, but we are not Christian. So take this with whatever grain of salt. And somebody says, how is that possible? The Bible existed before Christianity, and we teach from that perspective. However, I'm going to teach what the Word says. So if you'd like to still stick around and hear it, it's up to you. How you doing, Brother Jermaine? That's up to you. If you'd like to stick around and hear it. But I'm just letting you know, I'm not trying to come against your faith, belief, blah, blah. I'm just letting you know here we're not Christian. We believe in the Bible. We believe in what it says. We believe in the Messiah. We believe in 3 in 1, what's called the Trinity. We believe in all those things, but there's certain things that we don't believe in as far as what the word has been twisted into for many different belief systems. So I just want to make that clear. That being said, I will answer the question. I just don't want you to feel some kind of way or you'll hear certain things or whatever. I just want to tell you the truth. All right. So, but as anybody, new Christian or otherwise, fasting. Fasting ultimately is separation. Okay, and you agree? Okay, I just want to make sure that I come to you because I don't want to be like, oh, you go to such and such church and now I'm disrespecting the church and disrespecting your pastor. That's not my intent. Okay, so, so cool. But fasting or anything is fast is separate, right? And welcome, Jason. Thank you for those who welcome him as well, right? So anything that's fast, it separates. How you doing? How you doing, Brother Joseph? Yes, So if something is faster, it separates more, right? You believe in Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh Elohim? Okay, exactly. So that's where we're on the same place then. So yeah, okay, cool. So watch this. So anything that is faster separates more. So the concept of fasting, right, the sept or the idea we become one with, the concept of fasting just means that we separate more. Okay? So when one separates more or separates from anything, you can obviously fast from food, but this also means that we could fast from, and by the way, we're trying to do a family fast again. We're going to do a family fast, and we're going to do it through September the 22nd. Or up to the September 22nd to September 22nd. And this fast, once again, is not a specific one. This is not everybody's got to do the same thing. This is whatever you're letting go of. This is your personal journey. Pray about it. We're trying to start it on Monday. Some of you have already started, but we're going to officially start together on Monday. Whatever you need to let go of, if it's food or otherwise, let go of it. We're going to do it together, and we're going to do it getting ready for the feast, getting ready for the trumpet, looking for what Yah has to announce to us and what his next command is, right? But when we talk about, back to what you're talking about, fasting is separating. So to not have food is to separate from food, right? Usually done with the thought process, usually done from the belief system and the thought process that I am separating so that I can hear better from Yah, right? If I'm feeding my flesh, so if we don't talk about food, if I'm feeding my flesh constantly, believe it or not, even though I can still hear from Yah, so pray for my food, but when I'm eating, right, I'm eating, even if I'm trying to hear from Yah, I'm eating simultaneously while I should be eating from Yah. But if I stop eating, I turn down my plate or turn up my plate, whatever you want to call it. Once my plate is turned down, then I'm focusing more on him. Right? Also, too, what comes with fasting is a lot of what we would call suffering. Now, suffering can be pain, but also suffering or suffrage also has to do with choice. Right? So suffering also has to do with choice. Right? A lot of persons don't know that. So to suffer, the suffering of this present time is not worthy to be compared. It's talking about the choices we make that might cause us pain to go through. So when we suffer, We choose to go through certain things that might cause pain in our flesh, right? But ultimately are causing us to be able to grow in what Yah wants us to in the spirit. So fasting can be many different things, but that's ultimately what the design of it is ultimately for us to separate, even painfully so, right? It's also about sacrifice. If I'm suffering, right? If I'm choosing to go through something that will cause me pain, then it also means that I'm choosing to sacrifice, right? So a lot of persons don't catch that, but you might be, but when you suffer, when you go through something, when you make that decision, you are choosing to what? You are choosing to sacrifice. You're choosing to be a living sacrifice. You're all the way alive, and yet at the same time, you're willing to crucify the flesh. So ultimately, that's what fasting is. Now, if you're asking specifics about how you should fast, when you should fast, it's really open. There are certain times that we fast communally, and we say, okay, we're all going to do the same thing, and that's a decision. By the way, it's not a commandment. It's a decision that we make together to come together as one. That we stand on, believing that Yahweh will honor our coming together as one in His name. You have some people fast water fast. Some people fast intermittent fasting. Some people fast where they completely don't eat or drink anything for days and days and days, depending on how long their body should. By the way, you should prepare your body for fasting. That's a big part of stuff. To where you should get your body ready to eat less and less, or eat only certain things, and slowly take things out your diet. Especially if you're going to do a really long fast and you've never really fasted before like that, because fasting can be dangerous, especially if your body's not healthy enough to handle it. You know, your body has to be healthy enough to fast. You're making your body healthy, but you have to be healthy in certain regards. Sometimes you don't have time for your body to get healthy, and you're just going to have to do what it is and deal with some pain. But your body has to kind of get ready for fasting as well, which means that slowly but surely, by getting prepared for it, you're already in a sense fasting, as far as you're getting closer to complete separation from food or whatever it is that you're getting rid of, sugar, certain things in your diet, whatever, right? So outside of that, we'd have to get like very specific, but overall, that's the concept of fasting. How you doing, Russell? Thanks for being on. Thank y'all for the love. Thank you for the love. Appreciate y'all. I appreciate you. Great question, though. Hopefully that makes sense. I know that was a short answer in comparison to the first couple ones, but hopefully that makes sense. If not, feel free to tell me more specifically what you need. Right? Thank you, babe. Any Oh, okay. See, dang, I've been missing y'all pinning stuff for a minute. My fault, y'all. What's the take on Galatians? Yeah, you did ask that. Remember me? Sorry. Thank you. I think it was Sister Shima. Thank you, whoever the moderator was. What is our take? Well, we want to give y'all's take, so hopefully it'll be his. But what's your take on Galatians comparing law to the bondwoman? Ah, that's a great question. That might be a long study within itself. Let's see. Let's go there real quick. Let's go there real quick. Let's go there. Because I could be. Yeah, let's go there real quick. Because we could really mess that up. I'm trying to do a short, too short. I don't even know. It's Galatians. I think it's Galatians 4, right? Are we talking about where it says about Hagar? Let's go there. I think it's Galatians 4, right? I'm pretty sure. Galatians 4, yeah. Galatians 4, right? Like verse 20, verse 15 through 20 or something. No, that leads up to it. Okay, and then verse 21. Okay, all right. So great question. By the way, just to let it be known, where are we headed to with this? Right, one of the things that we're headed to is Galatians chapter 5. Where Galatians chapter 5 is going to talk about law. Right? Let's see. Thank y'all for the love. How you doing? Is it Shayna or Shaina Madai? I'm not sure if it's Shaina or Shayna, but thank you for being on. Thanks for being part of the community. We appreciate you. We honor you. Of course, Jason, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll see you around a little more in the future. We're on every rising at 8 a.m. New York time, starting at 8 a.m. New York time, except for, I'll be honest, I'll be a little late. I've settled into this weird thing I got to snap out of. I'll be about 10 to 15 minutes late as far as starting. Sometimes it's because the signal is set up, but I'm going to get it together. But we start at 8 a.m. New York time, and we go usually until about 11 a.m. New York time. On Q&A days, we normally go a little longer. Today, we actually have Shabbat service, so we do a podcast right after this on Saturdays. Elder and I used to be preaching. That starts at 10 a.m. New York time, so we won't be on as long today. And that being said, let's see. Where are we headed? Where are we going? Shalom, Chase. Shabbat Shalom. Yeah, that romanticism, yeah, it's crazy. Hold on. So Galatians chapter 4, though, Galatians chapter 4, verse 21, right? It is Shana. Okay, Shana. All right. I'll try to recall that and remember that. So verse 21, if I don't, please feel free to correct me. Okay. Galatians 4:21, I'll start there. It says this, it says, tell me that ye desire to be under the law. Do ye not hear the law? Verse 22, for it is written that Abraham had two sons, the one by a bondmaid and the other by a free woman. I'm sorry, I guess somebody just listened to something really loud in their car all the way down the road. It's still getting here. All right, verse 23. But he who has the bondwoman was born after the flesh, but he of the free woman was by promise. Which things are an allegory? All right, so he's saying in this point, they're not really supposed to be confused for each other, or for, I'm using this to make a point. What's his point? For these are the two covenants. The one from the Mount Sinai, which gendereth to bondage, which is Agar. For this Agar is Mount Sinai in Arabia, and answereth to Jerusalem, which now is and is in bondage with her children. But Jerusalem, which is above, is free, which is mother of us all. Verse 27, for it is written, rejoice, thou barren, that bearest not, break forth and cry, that travailest not. For the desolate hath many more children than she which hath an husband. Now we, brethren, as Isaac was, are the children of promise. But as then he that was born after the flesh persecuted him that was born after the spirit. Even so it is now. Nevertheless, what saith Scripture? Cast out the bondwoman with her son. For the son of the bondwoman shall not be heir with the son of the free woman. Verse 31, so then, brethren, we are not the children of the bondwoman, but of the free. Okay, so if we're not careful, our mindset, once again, Paul is usually used kind of by either side. You usually have like an extreme side, one or the other, Old Testament only, so-called Old Testament only, or New Testament only, right? And so Paul is kind of used as that, Salah, right? He's used as that quite a bit. But this is, before we even talk about, and if we talk about law, we have to be honest about it, because we're headed to Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 and 23, which is the same letter, right? This is not a separate letter. They're putting chapters and verses here, but this was originally written as a letter that goes all the way through. So we have to even talk about the fact that in the same letter, Paul has to be given permission, right, to even preach to the so-called Gentiles by Israelites who are disciples, right, who even will live in Galatia, right? Or not Galatia, sorry, but you get what I'm saying, where the Galatians are, right? And so he has to, you have to actually deal with that part, right, and talk about the only reason he was allowed was because he gave lawful reason to show that being grafted in is something that's there, and to make sure that he was teaching properly so that those who were disciples or apostles already would be able to make sure that they can graft him into the position of apostle and he can be released. That's part of this. We also have to talk about the fact that we're going to Galatians chapter 5, and before we even get to verse 22 and 23, it tells you all the things that are against the law, and then tells you, but love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, being like Elohim, being faithful, being meek, and being temperate. Those things, there is no law against those. So law is prevalent in this, and law doesn't go away. And law, we don't have to have laws against Yah's love, Because God's love is not lawless. So why would we be protected from it? Law doesn't give rights, law protects right. God's joy is not lawless. Why would we be protected from it? God's peace is not lawless. Why would we need to be protected from it, right? So this is actually a lot of conversation on law, and if you know about the book of Acts or Acts of the Apostles, you also know that during that whole during all of that, you'll see that they're having a lot of conversation about law. Is the law necessary? Is circumcision necessary? Should everybody who comes into this kingdom and is grafted in, do they have to become Israel like we used to? Can they just be this? There's a lot of fighting, infighting, stuff like that. So a lot of these letters that we're seeing are Paul responding to Hebrew leaders, and then even those who he leaves as pastors over different places in the world as he's going around and doing his thing as an apostle. He's writing responses to a lot of different questions. So we're dealing a lot in law, right? We're not. This is not just random. This is not just Paul, shooting off at the hip. That being said, once again, we started at verse 21, right? And this whole desire to be under the law. And what happens here is what? Verse 22, it is written that Abraham had two sons, one by bondmaid, right, and the other by free woman. First and foremost, this one by bondmaid, we have to be careful, because this one by bondmaid is the wrong word. Because Hagar was not a slave. She made choices. She was an indentured servant. She was not on the same level, right? But she was given an opportunity to come up, right, by Sarah, who only gave her the opportunity because she was like, I'm not getting pregnant. Sarah was out of pocket, and Sarah should have done what she was supposed to, because the promise was supposed to come through her and Abraham's loins, not through her and through Hagar. But she gave Hagar an opportunity. She went to somebody outside of the promise and said, I will allow you to have a piece of the promise, or I'll allow you to have the promise. She tried to give up her birthright in essence, right? God wouldn't let it happen. He protected her, but she basically tried to sell her birthright too, because of doubt. God, being infinite in his wisdom and forgiveness and reading the heart, was able to see that she was out of pocket. So we have to deal with that first of all. Right? But when it's comparing her to this woman who at least was not in the same level of Sarah, even though now, because of persons who wrote this and chattel slavery being a thing, at a time when we're starting to see that persons are rewriting this in English, you see this term bondwoman come. But she was not necessarily a bondwoman. If anything, she's an indentured servant, or she's somebody who decides to serve, like many men did as well, decide to serve under Abraham because they know that he's blessed, right? Anybody that blesses him will be blessed. Anybody that curses him will be cursed, right? But this woman who's there, right? This woman who is there, Hagar, you have two children, right? You have two children. You have these children, and you have one who's over here, one who's over there, right? And what persons have done with this, because it doesn't really say this. It doesn't really say this in here, right? But matter of fact, let me do something for us. I'm pausing if you haven't noticed, because I'm trying to do this, but I'm not doing it properly. To answer, see, like I said, which the question that was just asked, it's a deep question. I don't know if I can really answer this in just a little bit of time, but let me do it like this. Let's try something. I mean, I'm gonna go back to verse 1. We'll see how far we get. I'm gonna go back to verse 1. We'll see how far we get. I can't do it properly without. All right. Even, and if you have a King James version, I believe in bold they have above this something like sonship in Christ, right, or something like that. But anyways, verse 1, it says, "Now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, differeth nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all." Right. So this is something that we're talking about, being a fellow heir with Christ. Here's the context. Right? Those who are fellow heirs with Christ, those who are royalty, right? What is the difference between royalty and a servant? Is a servant royalty? If there's a prince, does a prince serve a king? You see, that's the context, right? If you're in line for the throne, you're fourth in line to the throne, do you serve he who sits on the throne? Right? So therefore, if you serve, you might serve in a different capacity than someone else who is, I don't know, someone else who's not in the royal family, who's not in the court. But if you, right, no matter where you serve, right, you all serve. Verse 2, but it's under tutors and governors until the appointed time of the Father, which means that so when you're under tutelage, you're under teaching. Okay, verse 3, even so we, when we were children, were in bondage under the elements of the world. So we were in bondage. Watch this. This isn't talking about just in bondage just because of law. What is this bondage talking about? Or this word bondage that they're trying to throw in here? The bondage is talking about when we were in the world, right? In the world, we were in bondage. So if we're not careful, somebody's going to say, no, when we're under the law, we're in bondage. And to a certain degree, if you get Paul's context, but that's not what it's saying here. Right? It says here, even so, when we were children, when we were coming up, we were in bondage under what? The elements of the world. Verse 4. But when the fullness of the time was come, Elohim sent forth his son, made of a woman, made what? Under the law. Right? So Yehoshua comes under the law. His mother was able to have him under the law. He has to be born of Israel under the law. He has to be able to have all bloodlines in him under the law, or all DNA in him under the law. Right? He has to have the Father's bloodline in order for him to be the Messiah. The only one to have the seed, literally the seed of the Father, by Holy Spirit implanted inside of a woman under the law. Okay? All right, verse 5. To redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. So to redeem them, the word redeem means to reconsider. So those who were under the law, we had messed up, we had gotten to some stuff, we had gone away. Those who were part of the Malachi series, we've been talking about this for weeks now, right? But under the law, doing some wrong things, got out of pocket, right? And he says he's going to send himself. In Malachi chapter 3, verse 1, he's going to send John the Baptist before him, greatest born amongst all women, right? So we had to be redeemed, reconsidered, so that the hearts of the fathers, you remember we talked about this last night, those who were with us, the hearts of the fathers can return to the children, and the hearts of the children can return to their fathers, right? So it's not that we got rid of the law. Those of us who were under the law, which is talking about one group on the planet, Israelites. Israel was under the law, had to be redeemed. Also Christ himself not only had to do that, but Israel still is going through a process of being redeemed, not today necessarily, even though we need to go through that process of coming back together. But I'm talking about when this is written, Israel still is in the process of needing to be redeemed because they have just gone against Yah, and because it was so off on the law, when Yehoshua HaMashiach came, he literally was a stumbling stone of offense to us rather than being our Messiah. Right? He is our Messiah, but you get what I'm saying. We didn't follow him as such. Right? So verse 5, to redeem them that were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. How is anybody going to be grafted in, according to the same author who writes Romans chapter 11? How can anybody be grafted in if the tree ain't right? If the tree is dying, if the tree is dead, if the tree is not rooted and grounded, right? Then how can you be grafted into a branch? Verse 6, and because ye are sons, so now he's talking to persons who have been grafted in, because ye are sons now, which means that you become part of the tree, part of the family, Elohim has sent forth the spirit of his son in your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So, because you believe in Yehoshua, you also believe in the Father, right? Verse 7, wherefore thou art no more a servant, but a son. And if a son, then an heir of Elohim through Christ. So now it gets tricky, because it just said, well, wait a minute, what's the difference between? Well, they said that there are those who serve, right? Now Paul is he's talking about stuff in their culture as well, in Greek, Greco-Roman culture, romanticized culture. So we got to know what's going on here, right? Who is he talking to? What is this? When is this? Where is this pen? But let's just do this. Wherefore, thou art no more a servant, but a son, right? Now, he just said in verse 1, if you're not careful, you'll miss this. He just said, now I say that the heir, as long as he is a child, is nothing different than a servant. So he's talking about now that you have grown. When you first came in as your little child, when you're on the breast still, when you're on the sincere milk. How you doing, Sister Mignon? When you're on the sincere milk, right? Hear what I'm saying? When you're on the sincere milk still, when you still growing up, You are in training. That's what he said. But once you get to a certain age, right, you are no longer on that level. But what happens? But you are now a son. And if a son, you are the heir of Elohim through Christ. Verse 8, how be it then, right? If that's the case, then how is it? When ye knew not Elohim, ye did service unto them, which by nature are no gods. When you were not under Elohim, how did you do service unto them? Right? In other words, when you were out in the world, you was out here, idol worship, all this stuff, right? Okay, now let's keep going, verse 9. But now, after that ye have known Elohim, or rather are known of Elohim, how turn ye again to weak and beggarly elements, whereunto ye desire again to be in bondage? In other words, now that you've been saved, now that you've grown, now that you know what's up, now that you're no longer just somebody coming in and you really don't know what's happening, but you've been taught, you've come in, nowhere has it said you've gotten rid of the law, right? It said that you came in under Christ, Christ is in you, you came in under the law, you've been in this long enough, right? Now why would you go back to those things that had you in bondage? It's not talking about the law, right? Persons want you to perceive it as such, but let's keep going because I know it's tricky. Verse 10, ye observe days and months and times and years. And I am afraid of you, lest I have bestowed upon you labor in vain. In other words, we had a problem when you came in, just like in Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 1 through 5. We're just like heathens. You are afraid of the changes of seasons, like Saturnalia and Christmas and all that. You start to make, or Halloween, right? And you start to do all this winter solstice and spring solstice stuff and everything. And I'm afraid. Like maybe what I said didn't get through to you. This is a response to things that he's hearing. And he's writing a letter. Right? How you doing, one and only? Right? Verse 12. Brethren, family, I beseech you, I beg of you, be as I. Be as I am. For I, as ye are, ye have not injured me at all. In the stuff that's going on is weird, but I'm still standing. Ye know through infirmity of the flesh I preach this truth to you at the first. In other words, from the first time you met me, even when I've been sick, even when I've been going through, I've been preaching this same specific thing. Verse 14, and my temptation, right? Or right, what I even fell into, which was in my flesh, ye despise not. The thing that my flesh had fallen into, my sickness, you didn't despise me or reject me, but you received me still as a messenger of Elohim, right? Even as you should as the messenger of Yahushua. Where, verse 15, where is the blessedness ye spake of? For I bear you record that if it had been possible, ye would have plucked out your own eyes and given them to me. Am I therefore become your enemy because I tell you the truth? So once again, where is the stuff about being against the law? You see what I'm saying? How you doing, Brother Dennis? Somebody has told us this, but there's no evidence, even just reading the scripture. He's not once said, you're not under the law. Matter of fact, he said Christ came under the law. He was born into Israel under the law. His mama was under the law, right? God sent him under the law. He came to give you the law. If you're going to be with him and he's in you, and that's why you cry out, Abba, Father, then you have to have the law in you. How you doing, Brother Josh? Right? He hasn't said anything about not being against the law. Verse 16, right? Or so verse 15 and 16. Once again, this is a response to things he's hearing. He says, "Wait a minute. So y'all hate me now? Y'all love what I said. Y'all love when I gave this. Y'all saw how sick I was. There wasn't anything when I was going through. You would have given me anything." He said to the point where y'all would have plucked your eye out. Right? You would have given me the shirt off your back. You would have opened your home to me and probably did. But now all of a sudden you got a problem with me. Verse 17, they zealously affect you, but not well. Yea, even they would exclude you that might affect them, that ye might affect them. But it is tabah to be zealously affected always in tabah. And what is tabah? And not only when I am present with you. So he said, you guys are now, when you go around your little friends, and I've been there for a minute, and you got peer pressure, now all of a sudden, oh yeah, you know, our spiritual father Paul, he's cool and everything, but we more cool with y'all, right? Or when I'm not around, y'all quick to be like, man, bump Paul, man, we don't really rock with him, but then in secret, y'all want to do this. That's what he's saying. Nothing about not being under the law, right? Right? Watch this. Verse 19, my little children, of whom I travail in birth again, until Christ be formed in you. I desire to be present with you now and to change my voice, for I stand in doubt of you. In other words, my little children, I'm the one that when you were born again, I was the one who was part of that. I was the one who was there. I caught you when you came out the womb. And man, I've raised you up, and then I left, right? And as you got older, you're supposed to be doing things more righteously, but now that you got older and I left and I gave you a chance to be able to do this on your own, you're doing everything except what I taught you. He said, but I hope one day when I stand in front of you again, right, that you'll go ahead and you'll get back in order. And I'll be able to change my voice. In other words, I'll be able to change my tone. I'll be able to change what I'm saying to you, and that you'll be righteous and do what you said. And do what you said when I was in your face. Now that I'm not in your face, you want to pretend that I'm nothing. You want to pretend I wasn't there for you. You want to pretend that we didn't come up together. You want to pretend I didn't love you. You want to pretend all these different things. Now, so verse 21, tell me. This is where verse 21 starts. This is what verse 21 starts. Praise God. How you doing, Area Gemini? Thanks for being part of the community. Now, this is where verse 21 starts. That's why I said I was going to do a poor job if I didn't make sure that we went through all that. Now, verse 21 says, tell me, ye that desire to be under the law, do ye not hear the law? The question now is, after I've shown you all this stuff and you treated me like this and I gave you the law and you said you would adhere to it, and now that I'm gone, you would have pretended the law don't matter. He said, now, you say that you desire to be under the law because that's what you used to be, but you don't hear it now that I'm gone. So verse 22, it is written, Abraham had two sons. See, now we go through the process of seeing that. Now, here's the deal. Remember, there's the two sons. There's Ishmael and there's Isaac. Ishmael is not the promise. Isaac is. This is not talking about law. Ishmael is not being likened to the law. It's being said here that you don't follow the law, and you're supposed to be my child, right? And you guys are throwing away this stuff. You're throwing away what Yah has for you, just like Sarah did. Right? Just like Sarah did. We are with Isaac, the children of the promise. Isaac is where Israel comes through. You see the context? Isaac is who Yahweh comes through. Right? So Isaac comes through Israel. Isaac comes through Abraham. Abraham did have a son named Ishmael, but as far as Yah was concerned, Yah took care of him in the flesh and blessed him and made sure he kept him alive in the flesh. Right? Because remember, he didn't take care of Hagar. See, there's something else we got to catch in this too. Can I just throw that out there? So those of you who went to the Bada Shot series with us, you know what we're talking about. He didn't take care of Hagar. Right? Remember, Abraham is told by Sarah at first, man, I'm tired of this. You got to get it going. Abraham goes to Yah and prays. Yah, Sarah or Sarah eventually says, you know what? Let's try and see how this works. She allows Hagar to stick around, but Hagar been making her feel kind of way, and she's walking around seeing something that was supposed to be her baby, so she feels. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on. Then they have the situation again. This time, Sarah or Sarah says, get him out. Abraham goes to the Most High and prays. The Most High says, listen to your wife. Right? Abraham says, listen to your wife. Abraham says, or as told by Yah, listen to your wife. He sees his wife, so he lets the woman who his wife told him to lay down with, and he shouldn't have laid down with too, by the way. We excuse Abraham's behavior, right? But he sees this woman, and he sees his child, and he lets him go, and Yah says, I'll take care of him. He lets him go, right? He prays about it. He trusts Yah. Hagar is in the wilderness, and Hagar is having issues, and she's crying out, she's doing this, and this is a little child that she's got, right? Ishmael. And Ishmael finally, right? What happens with Ishmael finally? How you doing, Minister Raj? Ishmael finally, Ishmael and Hagar are having a tough time. They're in the wilderness, they're in the sun, all this stuff, they don't have any food, and so they fall out. And Hagar falls out on top of Ishmael. When Ishmael cries out, it says Yah hears Ishmael's cry. Why? Because Ishmael is a son of Abraham. So even though he is not the promise, Yah still takes care of him, right? However, Isaac is the promise. Isaac is the one that gets the same promise that was on Abraham, the same one that will be given to Israel, the same one that's given back to Noah, the same one that we lost that Adam, or so-called Adam had in the garden, which is what? You will be fruitful, multiply, replenish, and subdue. Right? That's given to a particular bloodline, a particular family. That's not for everybody that exists. That's for a family of believers that they will be blessed in this regard. Right? Isaac has this promise. Right? Isaac has this promise. So watch this. For the son of the bondwoman should not be heir with the son of the free woman. The son of the woman that's in, the son of the woman, or this term they're using bondwoman, we'll just keep it the same. The son of the bondwoman, right? Or the son of Hagar is not what? Watch this. Shall not be heir with the son of the free woman. This is talking about world versus kingdom. It's talking about Israel versus those who are at ease without scoring. This is talking about Jacob versus Esau, right? It's the same context. This is those who are the children of Yah versus the children of the devil. And later on, when we get to the next chapter, chapter 5, verses 22 and 23, it will tell us what there is no law against, but before that, it will tell us all the things there are laws against, meaning that we should still recognize the law protects us from things that will take us out of eternal life. We should be aware of those things and make sure that we protect ourselves and teach against those things. Prayerfully, that makes sense. Welcome. And welcome to everybody. How you doing? This is JR Ministries, Junior Ministries. Because you can too, you said when he sits on the throne, is he still serving? Well, yes, obviously the king still serves. But we're talking about in service to the king, right? So technically, yes, the king still serves. That's why even a barak or a blessing, right? Literally part of the word barak or blessing means that somebody even gets on near me with, towards you, right? And gives you a blessing. A lot of persons don't know that, but that's even part of the word blessing or barak. Part of that definition literally means that if you're blessed, somebody has to come and serve you, right? So a lot of persons don't get that the king must serve or the royalty must serve, for sure. How you doing, Eugene? Thanks for being part of the community, or thanks for sharing, excuse me. Yes, there's a question I missed somewhere. I feel like there's a question I missed somewhere. And Gemini, welcome back. Anybody who's coming on, if you'd like to join us, we try to do this 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Oh, Sister Dawn, right? You had a question. To be baptized means born again. What happens with the physical born day, if anything? So to be baptized, I'm not sure of that. To be baptized, baptizo is to, that sounds like maybe more of somebody's belief system that's kind of been intertwined. The word baptize or baptizo is really speaking to being submerged. The izo is where you get the eyes from, but the baptizo is really talking about being submerged fully, right? And there were baptisms that happened even before the way we think about them. Obviously, John the Baptist was doing them differently than what we think about it today. And obviously, there were persons who were told to dip themselves in water for cleansing, or told to put their head in water at certain times for different things. In so-called Old Testament, right? But as far as, so one could say, I guess, if you're talking about the way that it's usually preached, and part of the Bible does say, we go down to the old man, we're submerged, and when we come up, we're supposed to be new. That's not exactly why Christ got baptized, which is why we always talk about that part of it. But if we're talking about being born again is really, born again is even talking about being born into the womb. We've talked about that before. Whose womb is it? It'd be the womb of Israel, or the womb, that now allows us to enter into the kingdom. And how you doing, Sister Deborah? As far as the physical born day, it doesn't have anything to do with, once one is baptized, their physical born day doesn't matter anymore or anything like that. And if there's, I'd have to see, to be honest, sis, I'd have to see if, I had to see more about maybe which context you are, because some of it is like on point, some of it's a little off, and I had to see kind of what the overall point of the person maybe was who's speaking. But baptism doesn't necessarily equate to being born again. One should be born again, and one should be baptized. But being baptized, like to be submerged in water doesn't make one born again, and to be born again doesn't mean that somebody therefore doesn't need to be baptized. But there are two different things that work hand in hand, that work together. But as far as the overall question, the physical born day, um, doesn't go anywhere, right? If one is born again, remember, even the process of being born again, technically, you should have a gestational period. You should be studied up and learning and growing and being all these things. And when you're born again, then you're born again, properly of the right spiritual mind. Even this word they're using of the spirit, the word spirit in the Greek, they're talking about a word that actually is pneuma. Pneuma, Pneuma, which means stoic thought that marries the spirit, body, and soul together. So a lot of times when you see the term spirit in the Greek, you have to be careful because they're not even talking about Havak only. A lot of times when you see the word spirit, or especially the word mind in the Greek, they're talking about spirit, soul, and body. So a lot of persons will. That's why we have to like look in context and look at some of this stuff. But yeah, but to be born again does not necessarily mean that that's your new born day. Although some persons recall the day they were baptized like it's their born day. I tell everybody they celebrate it every year. So some persons do that, but that's more like a tradition. Um, Even though it's a great tradition, it's a nice tradition to recall and be able to say, yes, I got baptized on this particular date, but that's not necessarily a scriptural. And there's not we don't necessarily have scriptural validation for that. If that makes sense. And I apologize, I don't comprehend exactly through the calligraphy what the name is. Sorry, but thank you for being on. Thanks for being part of the community. I don't know what that is. HE something R, something N R, something, I guess Y. I don't know. N something R, C R. Please forgive me. it's messing with my head. But that's all that I think we're running out of time. Yeah, we are. We're running out of time for today. Thank you all for being on. We appreciate you. I'm sorry. Chase had something too, right? Oh, well, you were talking about how we said romantic, real quick. Very, very, very quick, like 30 seconds quick. Yeah, so romantic means like being like Rome, or even some people would say Roman antics. Romantic does not mean that it's nice, or that it's lovely, or that it's cute, or that it's sweet, or that it's date. Romantic just means what Rome did. So, we're not necessarily worried about being romantic because if Rome did some stuff, Rome did a lot of evil stuff. Rome might do some stuff just because it's culture and what they came up with over time or whatever. But it doesn't mean I'm trying to be romantic, right? I'm trying to be what the kingdom says. So, amen to that. Alrighty. But thank y'all so much. Love y'all to life. So, we had the podcast in like 5 minutes. So, we're going to stop. We had the podcast in about 5 minutes. Elder Nice is going to give us a word. If you stick around on TikTok for the shout out, and those who know how to shout out works, just do what you do, please, because I don't have time to explain it today. If you can join us for this podcast, feel free. The children, you'll have Shabbat school children will have Shabbat school at 11 a.m. New York time on Zoom and on YouTube. And eventually it'll go off YouTube and just be on Patreon only, but we'll leave it up for a bit. But on Zoom and on YouTube, we'll have our 4 hours of power. So if you can, please, sir, come and join us. For that, that'll be from 2:30 p.m., whether you join us live, virtually or physically. It'll be in this location, 2:30 p.m. New York time to 7:30 p.m. New York time. And we'll be doing some really great stuff with Hebrew characters and teaching per verse, per hour, to kind of give you guys a heads up and show you some stuff that we're coming up with, some kind of with kind of concordance that we're coming up with. So prayerfully you'll enjoy it. But we're going to go ahead and do our shout out. If you want to do the shout out, you have to join us on TikTok. If you're on YouTube right now, you can go ahead and look in the description with the video to get more information on how to do so. We thank you guys for being on with us so very much. If you want to join us live, you have to have the Podbean app, and all the information for the podcast is going to be up on display on the screen in just a little bit. Okay? So love you all to life. You all take care. We hope that you do well. Please come out and feel free to support Elder Anais as she gets ready to preach and teach the word to us. Excited to be able to learn and to grow, and we thank you guys for being part of what the Most High has for us here. And we hope that you guys continue to grow into what Yah has called you to be even before the foundation of the world. So, Tada, my Shabbat, thank you, family, for being on. We appreciate you. When the music begins to play, those of you who know how to shout out works, do what you do. And those who don't know how to shout out works and don't know what I'm talking about, when the music begins to play, just follow the lead of those who are doing what they do, and you'll get the gist of it, and hopefully This has blessed you, and we'll see you around some other time. Until I have a chance to be before you again, remember, as always, family, that you are loved, you are necessary. I'm sorry, we give our honor and praise to the Most High. We give our praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Alma. Thank you to the moderators, ministerial staff, SOC, Lada, and everybody. And until next time, remember that you are loved, you are necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in the system no longer have to be of it. Shabbat Shalom, family. Take care. Peace. We'll see you next time.